Okay, shove 'em on. Shove 'em on. Hello, James, hi. Ty speaking. Hello, yeah, sure. On what? On disasters. Yes, but how are you going to do the program? Yes, I do. You're asking me, are accidents predictable? Yes. They're caused? Yes. Examples.
In Warwickshire, a young motorist was crushed to death before his mother's eyes when an articulated lorry, travelling at less than 30 miles an hour, jackknifed into his car.
When the British Safety Council was created in 1957 by James and Rosalie Tighe, Frank Love and Derek Ortmans, 3 words in its constitution stood out: education, research and propaganda. For the war generation, before the age of spin and public relations, propaganda meant something more positive, more inspiring than it does to our ears. Propaganda for safety can now be seen as part of a national spirit to build a society worthy of the people who had sacrificed so much in the war. And it's that spirit James Tighe, the organisation's exuberant founder and figurehead, wanted to summon, to transform safety in 1950s Britain.
Figures of death, 700 lives would be saved.
James Tighe was born in London on the 21st of December 1921. An early job making bed springs for an East End outfit was harsh. According to an inspector friend of James, the firm was notorious for using child labour. Perhaps it was this experience that triggered his passion for safety. Perhaps it was while serving in the RAF during World War II, where, it's reported, James witnessed a U-boat attack and sailors drowning as a result of faulty life jackets. Whatever the trigger, he must have felt he had found his calling, because in post-war Britain, safety campaigns were increasingly grabbing public attention. Top of the safety list were protecting drivers and children. It was the time of clunk-click and tufty-fluffy-tail, and dire warnings about the dangers of rivers, electric pylons, grain silos, and fireworks. In contrast, efforts to shift public attitudes about occupational accidents were mostly absent. Accidents at work were generally seen as an individual's fault, and though many workers had no clear legal protection, and each year hundreds, if not thousands, were killed, laws had changed little for years. But times were changing. Like everything else, safety was being modernised, and bombastic, flamboyant James was just the man to lead the charge. The big challenge was how to get people to take notice. In James's words, "The object of safety communication is for the message to remain in the memory and motivate certain action." Getting the press on side to spread the safety gospel was his priority from the start. Although BBC and ITV News covered our press conference launch of the National Fire Prevention Week, the items were squeezed out by the rail strike and the Algerian news. However, I appeared on ATV Midlands. Press coverage gave us 2,000 column inches. He quickly built the organisation's press capacity. Vital to have a press officer within the council with considerable press experience, rather than act as training or finishing school for insufficiently experienced press officers. A safety publication was launched. Safe Times, consciously adopting a tabloid style, was vehement in taking on what it considered were the vested interests that failed to protect workers or the public from harm.
An important part of any BSE campaign, art director Stuart Dorman. Stuart is responsible for all those posters that you see.
James's collaboration with artist Stuart Dorman from the 1970s produced the posters we now most associate with the British Safety Council. Graphics would be appealing and, for the most part, speak the language of the industrial working class. Seaside postcard humour, hand-drawn images with topical references, famous faces, and messages that are always clear and to the point.
Sterling Moss with the first contestants for the Master Driver Test.
Funded by the British Safety Council to encourage road safety.
Public events would be attention-grabbing, creative, and the British Safety Council quickly mastered the PR stunt, often involving a celebrity.
The majority of injuries in car accidents are to the head.
Here they are in Regent's Park in 1960, following its report on seatbelts. The variety and energy of campaigning was exhilarating. In 1964, we had a campaign aimed at the safety of ice cream vans, stopping chimes of delight, becoming chimes of death. We highlighted the danger of abandoned fridges to children playing.
Champion Jack Brabham driving.
When the law was recently changed to allow bigger lorries in the UK, we called them Goliaths of the highway and called for improvements to braking and anti-jackknife. Celebrities endorsed everything from safe driving to safe sex, judging winners, attending stunts, using their fame to spread the safety gospel. Sometimes stunts were bizarre, such as this one, about never forgetting the victims of accidents. Educating children about risk was important to the British Safety Council, and this stunt in 1979 created the world's longest poster.
Indians have larger ears, don't they?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to introduce the leader of the Greater London.
And by launching itself as a membership body, as well as selling training and offering awards, the British Safety Council built a professional movement anchored to the realities of business. And, vitally, it meant the organisation was financially independent and free to speak its mind. And speak its mind it did. Many of my adversaries have branded me a publicity seeker. Frankly, that's terrific. My job is to prevent accidents, not to worry about preserving a false image of respectability. A 1964 poster reflected the newly permissive times and sparked a public row with Reverend Guinness on the morality of using such images to sell safety. Inspired by Butlin's competitions, the British Safety Council launched Miss Beautiful Eyes, a national eye safety campaign that ran for over 30 years. Girls would audition and winners would appear in the national press. To today's eyes, this campaign does look sexist. But aiming messages at men in this way was not uncommon at the time. With the HIV epidemic, the British Safety Council played its part to raise awareness of the issue with National Condom Week. Again, it sailed close to the wind of public opinion to get its message across. Here he is at the Royal Albert Hall, where he tried to highlight inadequate fire doors and found himself barred.
If such a person is an undesirable person, yes, I'm undesirable.
Barred for a second time with security on his tail, Mr. Tighe had to concede he was going to be called a gate crasher.
Or nearly arrested when painting white crosses on cars with bumps and scratches to make a point about near misses. And if something is in the press enough times, politicians might take notice. The British Safety Council played its part in some big achievements. July 1968. I sent a telegram to the Prime Minister asking for a Royal Commission of Inquiry into rising industrial accident figures. James Tighe had done this every year, but this time it would be different. The story goes that his telegram was mistakenly delivered to the Employment Minister, who admitted that James Tighe was correct. The situation was serious and worthy of a fundamental inquiry. 3 weeks later, the Robins Committee on Health and Safety at Work was established. From that committee flowed the Health and Safety at Work Act, which extended for the first time protections at work to every employee everywhere. It is one of the ironies of history that 1974's Act came at a time when Great Britain was moving away from heavy industry, with its associated safety risks, to a workplace that was often office-based. Psychosocial risks took on new importance as mental labour increased, and industry was welcoming women in increasing numbers.
LCUs are life change units, a novel way of totting up the problems in your life that make you more likely to have an illness or an accident. The British Safety Council put out a long
James Tighe's promotion of stress management and the creation of the British Wellness Society in the 1980s were far-sighted.
Frankly, I'm sick of reading of pilot error after the event, and nobody measures a man before the event. So this Life Change Units is just one of the many, many tools that we in the Safety Council advocate to companies, and indeed everybody, to measure their stress level.
By the time of James's death in 1996, he'd been named World Safety Person of the Year and was one of the first Europeans included in the American Safety and Health Hall of Fame International. For all the controversy, the Albert Halls, the banned adverts, celebrity involvement and angry letters, it is easy to mistake the work of the British Safety Council as simply publicity-seeking. Instead, we need to look at why it was created, that sometimes in the pursuit of economic gain, we can lose sight of the value of life. The British Safety Council was created to redress this by actively influencing its members to form public opinion over these last 60 years. Work is once again changing fast. New risks and pressures will surface as new technologies and uncertainties grow. James Tighe's spirit, drive and plain speaking remain a lesson for us all as we continue to inform and influence opinion about the risks we face today and will face tomorrow.